Watch Michael Knowles slam not one, not even two, but three leftists back to back in this great new video. Guys, this is going to be a ton of fun. As I'm sure you know, Michael Knowles is a witty guy. He's quick on his feet and he's very smart. And some of these leftist college kids, well, not so much. So it's going to be a great video, guys. We're going to have a lot of fun with it and we're going to get into it. But first, everybody, please do me a huge favor. Like our video. If you are new, subscribe to it and share it around so we can keep bringing you guys this great content. As always, everybody, this is Resist the Mainstream and I'm your host, Arian. Let's get into it.
I wish I didn't have a time constraint because I have a lot of things I want to get through, but I'm going to read two quotes and ask how you justify this as, quote, a hero and, quote, one of the greatest men in history, as you said through your speech.
Where are your quotes from?
The quotes are from his journal.
From where?
In his journal.
I'm sorry.
His journal.
From the Journal of Christopher Columbus?
Yes.
Okay.
In his journal, he says, quote, "Let us in the name of the Holy Trinity go on sending all the slaves that can be sold." He also says, quote, "The Indians are so naive. I will bring as much gold and slaves as you need." That actually was not in his journal. That was to the court in Madrid.
I assume it wasn't in his journal because he would be writing to himself. Right, so you're saying Christopher Columbus agreed in a letter to his bosses who were funding his voyage that he would fulfill the terms of his voyage? That's what you're saying? This is some shock.
There's two parts to it. The first one was from his journal, where he quite literally said, "Let us in the name of the Holy Trinity go on sending all the slaves." The second one was to the court in Madrid, appeasing them, saying, "Yes, let's go get all these slaves from
Well,
this land."
you mentioned in the name of the Holy Trinity, Christopher Columbus baptized many natives. He did it personally. And he obviously was bringing the faith to the New World. You're at a Catholic university. If you believe that the faith is true and good and beautiful, as I do, as all Christians ought to do, then that's a wonderful thing to spread the gospel to people who have never heard it before.
I think you misheard the quote. The last part of the quote
I don't think I misheard the quote, but you can repeat it if you like.
In the name of the Holy Trinity, what should we do in that name? Go on sending all the slaves that can be sold.
So he said.
These leftists are so annoying with their strategies where they make an argument, it's a crappy argument, you show why it's a bad argument, and then they get angry and repeat it louder and act like you're stupid or something for not agreeing with them. Yeah, not how it works, bud. Also, Christopher Columbus was, by any objective standard, a good man, especially for his time period. Let's not forget that Christopher Columbus adopted an Indian son and raised him as his own. Is that what some kind of horrible, evil, super racist, genocidal maniac would do? Probably not.
Slaves to the New World, that is true. Or back to Spain, that is true. That was part of the deal. And if you listen to my lecture, I'm not sure. I heard your question, but I'm not sure you heard my lecture. He agreed to the encomienda system as a political concession because he was outfoxed by a local mayor named Roldan. This was the cause of much of his consternation in the New World. It's the reason that Bobadilla was able to take over and usurp control from him in the West Indies. This is a political reality. This is not a beautiful thing. It's a terrible thing. Slavery is an awful thing. None of us disagrees with that. But for us now, as people who have benefited, all people of the whole world who have benefited from the greatest country, the most profitable, the most charitable, the most equitable, the most just, the one that allows you to stand there and ask me that question, for us to spit on that man who made all of it possible because he made some moral concessions in order to take the most ambitious voyage at that time in the history of man is so bizarrely ungrateful. It is so ignorant of historical and political realities as to be naive and sophomoric.
My question was, how can you justify calling him a hero? I agree.
I've just justified it. That's my explanation.
Destroyed. I wonder what this kid thinks of George Washington. Probably a very similar thing that he thinks. Christopher Columbus. Oh, evil slave owner, terrible guy. Genocidal, racist maniac. Blah, blah, blah. Right, yeah. Well, guess what? George Washington, much like Christopher Columbus, was also a great man who achieved great and grand things. Much like Christopher Columbus, he dealt with slavery, was involved with it. But aside from that, he also impacted the world for centuries and centuries to come. And that impact does not suddenly disappear because somebody owns slaves. May sound tough, that's just the reality of it.
I think that you're standing on the shoulders of giants and you think that you're flying, but you're not. We are dwarfs standing on the shoulders of that great man, and we spit down on him in our ingratitude. How pathetic.
And that dwarf just ran away like a little girl. Next.
Haukola. My name is Mikey. I'm a member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe in South Dakota. My question is, so I personally think that the Columbus murals portray warts in history, obviously, which I think should be portrayed. Would you also support an alternative mural depicting Lakota people scalping settlers.
Scalping the settlers.
Tanyan Maniyo.
Could you describe? Well, hold on. I want to speak with you. Okay, he doesn't want to answer. I suppose the question.
Just a typical leftist hit and run strategy. Go up to the stage, vomit out a bunch of verbal diarrhea, and then run away like a baby. It's just incredible. Also, what was that guy trying to do? Was he trying to cast some kind of Indian leftist spell on him? All right, guys, look, don't hate on the guy, okay? He identifies as Two-Spirit.
That he should answer is whether there is any comparison between some gratuitously violent display intending to degrade in the year 2019 some, I don't know if the fellow is even listening to the answer to his question. Probably because he doesn't want to learn a thing, does he? If there's any comparison whatsoever from a beautiful 19th century mural, 12 of them, painted by the Vatican portraitist of one of the greatest men in history, to some modern attempt to portray gratuitous violence. I actually have no problem with some mural going up somewhere of depicting some of the gratuitous violence of whatever tribe that gentleman wants to be depicted. If he wants to depict that as the historical reality to remember, that's fine by me. I see no problem with it. And broadly speaking, if people want more art, if people want more discussion of history, not the revision of history, not the replacement of history with fantasy, but the actual discussion of history, warts and all, and there's a lot of warts in history, that has my blessing. I think that's a wonderful thing, and actually, I'm not surprised that the sort of person who would ask a question of a lecturer and then run out of the room lest he possibly learn something by hearing the answer. Well, I'm not surprised at all that that sort of person would so clearly misunderstand the entire purpose of education.
Ouch. Well, that guy got smoked pretty badly. Let's see what's up next.
My primary question is that you misconstrue a lot of data on your show and tell a lot of outright lies. And you did a lot so here, but you talk a lot about rationality and a good discussion and a lot of reasonable stuff. But it was curious, when you were talking, I didn't hear any science. I didn't hear any rational discussion. And if you want to have rational discussion, say about, I don't know, climate change or transgenderism, I actually have studies here. I mean, that would take too much time, but I don't know how much you'd be interested in.
Give an example of a lie that I said.
The 6,000.
This guy is reminding me of that source, that kind of meme. You ever see that? With these types of people, you can tell them that the media lies, and then they'll say, well, you got to show me an academic, scientific, peer-reviewed study to back up the media lies. Otherwise, you are in fact the liar. And then they think somehow they outsmarted you or got you.
Is there an example? You said I told a lot of lies tonight. What would be an example of that?
Lies tonight? Well, no, you didn't say lies tonight. You lack rationality. You didn't cite any evidence to talk about the climate change.
I said that the mankind is not going to be wiped out within 20 years because no scientist says. I'm sorry?
Science would disagree.
Which scientist?
The 97% of all scientists who say that 1 to 2 degrees Celsius will melt the ice caps such that there will be rising sea levels, mass extinctions, and it won't end the Earth, but it will change to a certain point the ecology of our planet such that it is much more difficult for humans to survive. That is the consensus. And a lot of climate change deniers like yourself, like Ben, like Clavin, they perpetuate that this is all a liberal hoax. And that science.
No, I'm not saying it's a liberal. I mean, it's obviously being pushed by politicians primarily. That's why at the United Nations, it's not
politics. Politicians are going to push political issues.
Right. It's politics, not science. That's my point.
Got him. Got him. No, you take the science, and then you say, I don't disagree.
Which study? Because what you're citing, that 97% number has been around for a long time. Al Gore used it in his movie. One issue with that is, first of all, science is not made by consensus. But second of all, the questions that were asked were such broad questions as to a whole array of scientists, many of whom had no expertise in the climate whatsoever. So to use a consensus number, especially one that's so old and has been so manipulated by politicians, is, I think, not really getting to the point. We don't.
A question I wish Knowles would ask this kid is, what field of science do the climate scientists study in? I just like to ask that question. It's a little cheeky, but it's kind of funny because I've never gotten a good answer from a leftist when I do ask it. They usually say, the climate scientists. Yeah, well, what field of study? Go silent. You'd think they'd at least say climatology or something, but I haven't heard that yet.
polls to figure out scientific data. So if you think the world is going to end in 20 years, I thought you said that you thought so.
It's going to change to a certain point, such a human habitation will be more difficult and it will be vastly different. I'm not a doomsday, idiot. And it's not an old figure. It's ongoing. It's right now.
That's a figure is decades old.
It's right now.
The 97% figure is decades old.
It is decades old. Al Gore and John Kerry said it all the time, and it's totally just a false statistic. And not only that, but the whole point of science is that you're constantly being skeptical and challenging your own assumptions. Basing off consensus doesn't sound like that at all to me, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Please be sure to help us out. Comment below. Let us know what you liked about the video, what kind of content you want to see in the future, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks. God bless.